I'm Cliff Caswell, this is policeoracle.com. You're joining us here following the Modernising Policing conference at the Barbican in central London, where we've had a diverse range of speakers from across the wider policing family talking about issues of interest going forward. Earlier I spoke to Jane Furniss, Chief Executive Officer of the Independent Police Complaints Commission. Police complaints are always a key talking point, and the system is set to get even more complex with the introduction of directly elected policing and crime commissioners in 2012. I started by asking Jane exactly how she felt the complaint system could be improved and where the problems lie.
Well, I think one of the things that's really important is that the system focuses on the complainant's reason for complaining and does that as quickly as possible, as early as possible, and seeks to put that matter right. So if a complainant is complaining that the police officer was rude to them or didn't turn up when they promised they would, that kind of thing, which is a typical kind of complaint, instead of spending ages looking at whether the officer did commit a misconduct, what the force ought to be doing is picking up the phone very quickly and saying to the complainant, "I'm sorry, we got this wrong, how can we put it right?" And doing that early will actually reduce the number of complaints that are made. So fix the problem, apologise, put it right is the focus, rather than asking the question, who did something wrong and how should they be punished. So that's point one. Point two is that at the moment the complaint system focuses entirely on misconduct of individual officers rather than whether the service as an organisation has failed. And so one of the things that we're asking the government to do is to change the legal definition of a complaint so that it actually deals with the service failure that has happened rather than only the misconduct of an individual. And then the third thing is that the system at the moment, for good reason historically, actually builds in quite a lot of bureaucracy. There's a huge amount of process that needs to go on, and we think that could be cut, which doesn't add any value, and we think that could be cut out, and as a result make the system simpler, easier to understand for both officers and staff, police staff, and for the public, reduce cost, reduce time, and make the system more effective.
You spoke a little bit in your presentation earlier about the forthcoming Police Reform and Social Responsibility Bill. I understand that you'd like to see some additions to that legislation which will make it easier to reduce bureaucracy and,
yes.
and the burden.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, again, we would hope that the bill will make the change to the complaint definition. That's one change that could be made. But secondly, cut out some of the process that I was describing, so that, for example, complainants have to consent to various processes in the system. The police have to apply to the IPCC if they wish to dispense with or discontinue a complaint. This is all very technical stuff. It doesn't add any value, and we think the better way would be to trust forces to make the right decision first time. And if they don't, or the complainant is unhappy at how they've made that decision, then they should have a right to appeal to us. But rather than go through several processes to reach that point, there should be one general right of appeal which the complainant can exercise at any point in the process. That would actually cut out a lot of the bureaucracy, but that needs primary legislation.
One of the things also in terms of legislation is the forthcoming proposed introduction of directly elected policing and crime commissioners, and the government has said the IPCC will have a big part in the investigation of complaints in that area. How do you stand in practical terms with that role, the new role which you'll have?
Well, I think it's difficult to know yet until the post is created and people are elected as to exactly what the nature of any complaint or misconduct might be. I suppose the nearest parallel is complaints against chief constables at the moment, where we obviously have responsibility. The reality is there are relatively few complaints against chief constables, and many of them are ones that are actually about the organisation, not the individual's misconduct. I suspect that we won't know what the role for the IPCC will be in relation to PCCs until they've been elected and in post for a year or two. Of course, there's a real possibility that there may be a serious complaint or a serious misconduct matter by an elected commissioner. I suspect that that will be relatively rare, but there may be quite a large number of relatively small complaints by people who believe that the PCC promised to do certain things as part of their election manifesto and have failed to deliver, and that will be seen as a matter to complain about to us, and we will have to determine whether there is a valid matter there, and if so, how it should be dealt with. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges for us, is filtering out the political point scoring from the very real concerns that the public might have.
Jane, thank you very much indeed for your time.